Dr. Brenda Cleary, welcome to North Carolina Now.
Nice to be here.
You are the Democratic candidate for the 13th District. Let's just go into some questions here about some of the issues. Now, increasing jobs and employment are very hot topics. What do you think needs to be done to stimulate growth, and how does minimum wage fit in?
Well, minimum wage is a common sense solution that needs to happen soon, and most Americans are for that. And people, if they have to work 2 or 3 jobs to feed their children, that means they're not spending enough time with their children. So I'm a big fan of that, and we'll work with others in Congress to try to get that done.
Now, another area, education. What do you believe needs to be done, especially when it comes to teachers being recruited and retained? And then, on the other hand, when you look at students coming out of college with a heavy debt load, what do you think that needs to be done to ease that load?
In terms of teachers, I think that we need to pay them a wage that relates to the work they do every day and their preparation to do that work. And then teachers, like every other group of workers and group of professionals, really want to know they're appreciated and they're supported in other ways besides a salary. We actually had a wonderful organization that recruited and retained teachers, and unfortunately it's not there any longer. I think it was short-sighted. We probably should try to rebuild something like that again, because teachers make a difference every single day.
Let's talk health care. What do you believe needs to be done to ensure that all citizens have affordable health care?
Well, the first thing is at the state level, we really need to expand Medicaid. Now, that's not a federal jurisdiction since the Supreme Court ruled otherwise, but hopefully we can work on some incentives to get states like ours to expand Medicaid. And I'll just say that's also a job creator, and it will save our rural hospitals. Sometimes they're the only big employer in a community.
Energy is also a big topic. What are your thoughts on renewable energy, where we need to search for this energy, and even fracking? The idea of fracking is a very strong issue right now.
Maybe we could take some of the oil subsidies that we provide now and put them into renewable energy, again, creating jobs. That's going to be the future, hopefully. Fracking, well, people are all over the place in North Carolina, especially since we're on that path. But honestly, I think that we need to take a step back because there's a lot of danger in it. There can be some good in it, and most North Carolinians seem pretty afraid of taking that step. So let's don't push it too fast, is what I'd say.
North Carolina is a large agricultural state, and then when it comes to seasonal harvesting, some of that harvesting is being done by undocumented immigrants. How do you feel that immigration reform should take place?
Well, I think that as a nation of immigrants, we ought to be able to come up with some immigration policy that works better than it is now. I know we need to protect our borders, but we need to do that keeping humanitarian interest at heart. Like right now with these kids on the border, we need to use as much of our heart as other logical thinking. I think that people should have a path to citizenship, especially if they're law-abiding people and are contributing to our economy and contributing to our culture. And I will need to think more about how that should happen. But I love diversity. And if people are going to come here and love America and love North Carolina as I love it, I think that we should have more of a welcome door.
Now, another diverse area of North Carolina is that we are a military-friendly state, large military state. A twofold question for you. As things are going on overseas, what do you think that our policy should be in handling conflicts overseas? And then with those veterans who are perhaps leaving the military, how do you feel that they should be treated as they enter back into society?
In terms of conflicts around the world, these are really weighty issues for any president, for any Congress, for the American people. But I think that sometimes if there's clear and present danger, we need to take immediate action. Most action needs to go before the Congress so that they're actually going before the people and the people who represent them in Washington. And there's many minds thinking about it, especially if it's a decision like entering a war. We know that that's a really serious decision. There's so many conflicts in the world. ISIS is a very unusual problem for both the U.S. and our allies. But in terms of what exactly to do about that, as a congresswoman, I will turn to experts on both sides of the aisle in military operations before making a decision.
And of course, when it comes to those servicemen and women who are coming out of the military and they're trying to get back into civilian life, and some of them have been injured during their service, what do you think needs to be done to support them?
Well, I started my career as a VA nurse. I haven't served in the military. Many of my family members have. But I really have a sensitivity toward returning veterans. And I think one thing that Congress could do is when we work with Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Defense Department on the budget for a military action or a military deployment, we need to build in some transition resources, whether it's stress disorder, which is a valid disorder, some injury, so that we can actually serve the veterans when they come home, along with other kind of reintegration programs like job training and those kinds of things. We need to take care of our veterans.
Dr. Brenda Clary, the Democratic candidate for the 13th Congressional District, thank you for stopping by and sharing your insights with us.
It's really great to be here, and thank you